Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Thursday, January 9th, 2020, and today we're going to be doing a very simple review over the 2020 Democratic presidential primary. Now, pretty much the main thing that I want to cover, as you can tell by the title of this video, is that this race is slowly turning into a 2 to 3 person race, probably going to end up being a 2-person race by the end or around Super Tuesday. Right now, we're taking a look at pretty much a split between Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, and Elizabeth Warren. Pete Buttigieg has since dropped under 2 single digits, almost close to where Michael Bloomberg is, and you can pretty much see he's been on a pretty, not steep decline, but on a decline from where he was in recent events. So Pete Buttigieg pretty much peaked at around 12% nationwide, and I mean, that makes sense just considering the amount of media coverage that he got at that particular point during the election season, but it seems to have significantly dropped. By significant, I'm not saying 10-20%, but we're definitely seeing a decrease in Pete Buttigieg support nationwide and an increase in Bernie Sanders support, but not so much for Elizabeth Warren. Now, this will have a lot of implications nationwide. When we go ahead and take a look at our first race of the entire election season, which will be the Iowa Democratic Caucus, we actually see a race between Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders. Now, pretty much Bernie Sanders number 1, second place nationwide, definitely not a bad place to be starting off in this election with a number of candidates that could do very well in certain states following after the state of Iowa. But Iowa could be a very big win for Bernie Sanders if he's able to actually outperform the number that he outperformed back in 2016. The polls underestimated him then. We'll see if they underestimate him now. But Pete Buttigieg is also doing pretty well, which may keep him in the race for a little bit longer. But with those national numbers after he hit Iowa and New Hampshire, he's pretty much going to just level off and probably decrease as we continue throughout the primary season. But Bernie Sanders is also doing pretty well in the state of New Hampshire. He actually leads in the state of New Hampshire over Joe Biden. Again, a 3-way race, but this time it does not include Elizabeth Warren. That goes for Iowa and New Hampshire. Pretty much a statistical tie between the top 3 in Iowa and New Hampshire, the first 2 races, which will definitely clear a pathway for a Biden-Sanders top 2 nomination process, pushing Elizabeth Warren down probably a lot further down than she is right now on a nationwide level. Perception is everything. If Elizabeth Warren ends up with single-digit delegates after 2 contests, a lot of people aren't going to think that she is going to win the nomination. Yes, it's early, but after that Iowa debacle with Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, a lot more people took Bernie Sanders seriously after that Iowa caucus. Nobody really expected it, but also nobody is really expecting a blowout for Bernie Sanders either. So something like that happens where he is underrepresented by this polling data and overperforms it, then it's going to be very, very powerful for his campaign. Pretty much Bernie Sanders right now just needs to get his name at the top, and he needs to be able to win some of these contests. Right now, Joe Biden is actually doing a little bit better in the state of Iowa than he was before. Pete Buttigieg used to be leading over Sanders. Biden was at one place in 4th place in the state of Iowa, has now risen up to 3rd place. But if you take a look at some of the more recent data, it's looking a little bit better for Joe Biden than it has before. But not just Iowa and New Hampshire. Nevada is also an upcoming race where Joe Biden is doing well in. Again, the top 2 candidates are Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders, but Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are definitely intertwined there in terms of close numbers. But right now, Biden definitely takes the lead in Nevada. Same thing in the state of South Carolina. Pretty much Sanders and Warren fighting it off for 2nd place, but Biden clear victor in the state of South Carolina. So pretty much Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, these are top states. South Carolina, top 4 states that people mention when they discuss early primary election data. The reason being that these are the first 4 primary elections. I think these are right before. There actually is a schedule on here which shows when the primaries are. I believe it's before Super Tuesday, which is why it's covered. Right before Super Tuesday. These are the first 4 elections. Now, pretty much there is only one more Democratic primary debate. Now, that one will actually be the last time we will see these people on a national debate stage right up until Iowa. This is a CNN debate. It is in Iowa as expected, and that will be on the 14th of January. we can expect probably the same type of performance from all of the candidates, but we're definitely going to see Elizabeth Warren a little bit more on the offensive here, mainly because she needs to get her place back up to second place, if not first place nationwide, which might be a stretch for Elizabeth Warren, but also a lot of these other candidates are going to need to defend themselves as well. So it could be a bloodbath. It might not be. You never know. But right now, Iowa is coming up on the 3rd of February, and then there's a New Hampshire debate, and then the New Hampshire primary. Then there is another presidential debate, then the Nevada caucus, and then another presidential debate, and then the South Carolina primary, and then Super Tuesday. Now, Super Tuesday, this one actually hasn't been covered by a lot of people. We might actually see some good results for all of these candidates. Alabama, easy Biden victory. American Samoa, not so sure, but it could end up being Biden or Bernie Sanders. Arkansas, Biden victory. California actually shows Bernie Sanders ahead. We need to discuss the polling data there as well. In the most recent poll, actually, I guess Biden leads in the RCP average, but the most recent poll, right here by NPR, Sanders leads by 3%, and in fact, Biden is in third place in that. But pretty much a statistical tie between the top three candidates, but with Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders both in second place statewide. I think this will be a very, very interesting race because these candidates are going to be getting a lot more than they are currently polling at. Biden's definitely not getting only 21% in the state of California. There's 416 delegates here. It's a huge, huge prize, and usually it's in June. This time it's been moved up to Super Tuesday. It was big news back in 2017, I believe, when they announced it. I think it was 2017, 2018. Around that time period, they announced that they would be moving California up. Changed the entire game. Colorado, the Colorado presidential primary, that should be Bernie Sanders territory. Same thing with the state of Maine, but we might see opposition with Elizabeth Warren here. Massachusetts, actually surprising. If you take a look at the polling data here, Warren is only leading by 6.5% statewide. I find that a little bit surprising, mainly because it is her home state. I was expecting her to be leading by 10-20%, but we'll see as more data comes out. Minnesota also could be an area for Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden. North Carolina, definitely Biden. Oklahoma, definitely Bernie, unless Elizabeth Warren gets into part of the vote there. Tennessee, I see a Biden victory. Texas, Biden. Utah, Sanders. Vermont, definitely Sanders. Virginia, really iffy there, but probably Joe Biden. And then Democrats abroad, I would say, were Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren. But pretty much top wins for a lot of the Democrats, except for people like Pete Buttigieg. Michael Bloomberg, I'm not even going to discuss because he's probably not even going to make it to the convention stage at this point. But Pete Buttigieg, not mentioned pretty much after Iowa and New Hampshire, mainly because he does not appeal to any of the electorate areas that we are focusing on. Iowa, right next to Illinois, conveniently located right next to Indiana, a regional advantage, also appealing to white voters, something Pete Buttigieg does amazingly. Same thing in the state of New Hampshire. But what happens when you go to a predominantly African-American Democratic primary area, for example, or not predominantly African-American, but huge part of the population there, for example, Mississippi or Alabama or Georgia or South Carolina. And Pete Buttigieg appeals to, I believe, gets 1% of the African-American vote nationwide. So all of his vote is coming from white voters. When you don't have that congregation in certain areas, especially up to Super Tuesday, he's going to be quickly eliminated from the primary season just based off that alone. California, like I mentioned, Biden leading there narrowly, but still, I actually do think that Bernie Sanders is going to come up on top there. Texas, like I said, I do expect that to be a Biden victory by a pretty solid amount. Massachusetts, like I said, Elizabeth Warren, I expected a larger margin, but we also have general election data. Now, electability is going to be a huge issue in 2020. As of right now, Joe Biden outperforms Bernie Sanders better in every single poll, every single statewide average, except for maybe New Mexico because of a recent poll that just came out. And that is something that a lot of centrist Democrats are going to bring back up. The same thing they argued with Hillary Clinton, except this time the data actually supports them. When Hillary Clinton was going against Bernie Sanders outperformed Hillary Clinton in polling data. This time Biden outperforms Bernie Sanders in polling data. But again, they're both electable candidates, but those candidates that are limboing in 1% to 2% margins are the ones that are slowly going to be knocked out. Nobody's worried about a Biden +8 or Sanders +5 margin in Nevada, but what they are worried about are Warren +1 and Buttigieg +1. Same thing goes for Wisconsin. Biden +4, Sanders +4, but then it goes down to Warren +2 and Buttigieg +1, both within the margin of error. Not just there. Michigan, Biden +7, Sanders +4, Warren and Buttigieg +2. Georgia, Trump versus Biden. Biden loses by narrowest amount, followed by followed by Buttigieg, then Sanders, then Warren. Arizona, a tie between Biden and Trump. Trump beats Sanders by 1, Warren by 2, Buttigieg by 3. If you pretty much take a look, like I actually said, Buttigieg actually appeals to the white voters in Iowa a little bit better than a lot of the other candidates, including Joe Biden. So he actually does a little bit better than Joe Biden in the state of Iowa, but Biden pretty much outperforming both Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. But as I mentioned before, in New Mexico, maybe thrown off because of this recent Emerson poll. But still, Florida, Biden +2, and then Trump wins the rest. Virginia, Biden +4, Trump wins the rest. So it's a pretty consistent trend that we see across all the statewide election data. Biden is definitely going to be propped up as the most quote-unquote electable candidate. That's the future that I see for Joe Biden. As for Bernie Sanders, as soon as Elizabeth Warren's numbers drop, they're going to immediately jump to Bernie Sanders. If you add Elizabeth Warren and Sanders together under one candidate, obviously they would become the first place candidate nationwide. The progressive wing of the Democratic Party may not be the majority at this point, but they definitely have a pretty good standing that they can definitely stand up to someone like Joe Biden, who's merely at 30% nationwide right now. A 9% lead nationwide when you have two progressive Democrats that are in second and third place. If they come together, it might be game over for Joe Biden, but also that's probably what is not going to happen. Super Tuesday will fare out to be good news for Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, but we may see a drop with Pete Buttigieg support, Michael Bloomberg support, Andrew Yang, Amy Klobuchar, Tulsi Gabbard. We may see a number of 2020 Dems drop very, very quickly. So thank you guys for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below, and I will see you all tomorrow.